In the small mountain town of Frosthaven, the holiday season came with a peculiar tradition, the 12 Nights of Giving. Each evening, starting on Christmas Eve and ending on January 5th, the villagers gathered at the town square to leave offerings beneath the towering evergreen tree that dominated the center. The gifts weren't toys or food, but strange, macabre tokens, severed animal heads, jars of blackened teeth, and bundles of feathers matted with blood. Outsiders never stayed long enough to understand why. Ellie and her younger brother Nathan didn't have a choice. Their car had broken down on the snowy road leading out of town, and with no cell service and no way to hike back in the blizzard, they'd been forced to take refuge in the inn. The innkeeper, an elderly woman named Mabel, had been kind enough at first, but her gaze lingered too long, her smiles too sharp. "You're just in time for the last few nights of the festival," she'd said, placing 2 steaming mugs of cider before them. "You'll find it memorable." Ellie had a bad feeling from the start. The villagers seemed overly curious about them, their questions invasive. "What brings you here? Does anyone know where you are? Family nearby?" When they attended the Christmas Eve ceremony, she noticed their strange, almost reverent expressions as they placed their gruesome offerings beneath the tree. She also noticed the smell of decay that clung to the air, even as fresh snow fell. Nathan, only 17, brushed off her concerns. "They're just weird locals," he said. "It's probably some old custom." But by the 5th night, Ellie knew it was more than that. They had been invited to participate in the festival's offerings. Mabel handed them a burlap sack, wriggling with movement. "A token for the tree," she said, her tone leaving no room for refusal. Nathan, too polite to argue, opened the sack to find a rabbit, its eyes wide with terror. Before Ellie could protest, a villager took the rabbit and slit its throat, letting the blood drip onto the snow before tossing the carcass onto the growing pile of gore beneath the tree. Ellie gagged, dragging Nathan away. "This isn't normal," she whispered. "We need to leave. Now!" That night, they tried to sneak out of the inn, but as they reached the door, Mabel was waiting, her face shadowed and severe. "Leaving before the 12th night is forbidden," she hissed. "The giving must be completed." When Nathan protested, she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength, her nails digging into his skin. "The tree watches. The tree knows. You don't want to anger it." The next morning, Ellie woke to find Nathan missing. Panic set in as she searched the inn, then the streets. The villagers ignored her pleas for help, their faces blank, their eyes distant. As night fell, she ran to the town square, hoping to find him. The tree loomed over the snow-covered ground, its branches creaking ominously in the wind. Beneath it lay the mound of offerings, now larger than ever. And then she saw him. Nathan was tied to the trunk, his eyes wide with terror, his mouth gagged with a strip of cloth. His face was streaked with tears, and his breath came in ragged gasps. Before Ellie could reach him, the villagers emerged, surrounding the tree in a silent circle. Mabel stepped forward, holding a ceremonial dagger, its blade glinting in the torchlight. "The tree demands blood," Mabel intoned. "Tonight we honor the old pact." "No!" Ellie screamed, rushing toward them, but rough hands grabbed her, pulling her back. She thrashed and kicked, her cries drowned out by the villagers chanting. Mabel raised the dagger, her expression one of solemn devotion. Nathan's muffled screams filled the air as Mabel plunged the blade into his chest. Blood sprayed across the snow, steaming in the frigid air. The tree groaned, its branches twisting as if in ecstasy. The ground beneath it pulsed, and Ellie saw something moving, roots slithering like snakes, soaking up the crimson pool spreading around Nathan's body. The villagers cheered, their voices echoing through the night. Mabel stepped back, her hands dripping with blood, as the tree's bark split open to reveal a grotesque face. Its hollow eyes glowed red, and its mouth stretched into a jagged grin. "The pact is honored," the tree rumbled, its voice deep and wet. "The new year begins." Ellie's captors released her, and she collapsed to the ground, sobbing. The villagers dispersed, their duty complete. Nathan's lifeless body hung limply against the trunk, his blood still dripping into the snow. But it wasn't over. The tree shifted, its roots tearing free from the earth. It began to move, dragging itself toward Ellie with a sickening creak of wood and bone. "You!" it growled. "You are next!" Ellie scrambled to her feet, running blindly through the snow. Behind her, she heard the tree's heavy movements, its roots tearing through the frozen ground. She stumbled, falling face first into the snow, and turned to see its gnarled branches reaching for her. With a surge of adrenaline, she grabbed a nearby torch and swung it at the branches. The flames caught, and the tree let out a deafening roar, its wooden flesh cracking and popping as it burned. The villagers screamed, their faces contorted with rage and fear. "The pact!" Mabel shrieked. "You've doomed us all." The fire spread quickly, consuming the tree and the offerings beneath it. The villagers fled as the flames illuminated the night, casting grotesque shadows against the snow. Ellie ran, her body trembling, her mind racing. She didn't stop until she reached the edge of the forest, where the wreck of her car still sat. Days later, when she finally found her way back to civilization, no one believed her story. The authorities found no trace of Frosthaven. The road she described led only to an unbroken expanse of wilderness. But every Christmas Eve, Ellie dreams of the tree. She hears its groaning branches, smells the iron tang of blood in the air. And in her dreams, it whispers to her, its voice cold and hungry, "The pact was broken. You will pay."